How will it be this end of which I once heard you speak, brother Enny?
It will be as 'twere a mighty rending in the skies, and the mountains shall sink and the valleys shall rise, and great shall be the tumult thereof, I should think.
Will the veil of the temple be rent in twain?
Well, the veil of the temple's always rather dodgy, but should be rent in twain about 2 minutes before we see the sign of the flying manifest dancing on the firmament.
And will there be a mighty wind?
Certainly there will be a mighty wind, if the word of God is anything to go by.
Will this wind be so mighty as to lay low the mountains of the earth?
Can't hear a blind word you say. You're speaking too softly for the human ear, which is what I'm equipped with. You'll have to speak a little more loudly, please.
About this wind.
It's no better, is it? I ask you to speak more loudly, and you speak more softly. A strange reaction from a follower. Or perhaps I'm very old-fashioned. Perhaps I'm very old-fashioned, expecting you to speak louder.
Yes, you are.
Come along, we haven't got all day for the end of the law. Get on with it.
Will this wind?
We've heard that wind. We've all heard will this wind, haven't we? We've heard this, will this wind, quite enough, thank you very much. What will this wind is what we want to know. Not will this wind, we don't want to hear will this wind again, that would be a very tedious experience. What will this wind?
Will this wind?
Will this wind, yes?
Be so mighty.
Be so mighty.
As to lay low.
As to lay low.
The mountains.
The mountains.
Of the earth.
Of the
earth.
Will this wind be so mighty as to lay low the mountains of the earth? No. It will not be quite as mighty as that. This is why we have come up on the mountain to be safe, you stupid kid. Up here on the mountain we shall be safe. Safe as houses. What will happen to the houses? Well, naturally, they'll all be swept away and consumed by the power of what is dancing on the Jeremiah, and serve them bloody well right, as far as I can hear.
When will it be this thing of which you have spoken? When?
Well, in about 2 minutes' time, according to the very ancient pyramidic scrolls.
Perhaps we better compose ourselves.
Good idea. Prepare for the end of the world. 30 seconds.
Have you brought the picnic basket?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now is the end. Everything's world. It was GMT, wasn't it? Well, it's not quite the conflagration we've been banking on. Never mind, lads. Same time tomorrow. We must get a winner one day. I think it was this one, this one here.
Welcome to my Friday night special. End of the World, December 21st, 2012. I phoned the Mayans in Mexico City, and they put me onto a guy in a small town, and he had to go and talk to one of the elders to answer my questions. And the Mayan elder says that this has nothing to do with the end of the world. It is the end of a astrological cycle, the one that's 26,000 years long. And it repeats. All these astrological cycles have a slightly different flavors to them, which is why we don't get a straight ahead repeat of every life in every era. They're just similar. Like every morning is actually the same morning, but we don't think of it like that. And every spring is the same spring. We don't think of it like that. And every year is the same year, but we don't think about it like that. But that's what it actually is in the fourth dimension. It's the eternal recurrence of the same cycles. Now, the reasons the Spanish burned all of the Mayan literature wasn't because there was some great cosmic secret in it. They just wanted to destroy their religion so they could hammer in Catholicism, which is still the main religion there. We had a hard time finding somebody who wasn't Catholic who was actually a Mayan. So that's with that. We've got 3 hours to go here. I don't see any meteors falling from the sky or earthquakes, volcanoes, or people suddenly ascending. And since I've been in several of these mystery schools, I should be closer to ascending than the average guy. And I'm having quite an ordinary pre-Christmas stressful day. Can't get it anywhere because everyone's in my way kind of day. So I don't think so. Things have changed much. Something I'm going to suggest is that if you bought a book or a CD or went to a lecture about ascension happening tonight during the 8 minutes of the alignment, that you ask for your money back. The old Mayan guy said, in his opinion, the white man had turned the Mayan calendar into a business so they could sell books and tapes and lectures and get some free fame. So I think the nothingness of what's going on is very far away from what was promised, stated, alluded to, promulgated, hyped. One of my adherents said it's much easier for people to look at what she calls the woo-woo stuff, the fabulously interesting theories, rather than look at the hardcore simplicity of what needs to be done with our population, Earth, to stop the insanity, as Susan Powder used to say. There's a new level of understanding just been released this month, which is that the heads of governments, corporations, and religions are psychopaths. And that is why things are the way they are. And it's time for the reality of the psychopathic percentage of the population, which is 2.5%, to become common knowledge and to be dealt with similarly to the pedophilia group who are psychopaths. It used to not be talked about, and then it was a one-out case, and now we're finding they're everywhere. Now we have public registries for them, sex offender registry, which is a step forward. And this kind of thing is possible. We used to not have human rights. Somebody said, hey, what about my human rights? And the reaction was, you don't have any human rights. What are you talking about? And they said, I'm talking about freedom of speech, freedom from oppression, all that stuff that is now human rights. Now people know what we're talking about. They didn't used to exist, and now we have them. So hopefully the next thing to happen is public and common knowledge of these psychopaths among us. And they come in all sizes. Yes, they can include the bad teacher that you had in any grade, or a psychopathic parent or two, or psychopathic relationship partner or marriage partner. They're basically not fixable. So we just need to get them out of positions where they can kill millions of people with a signature. And that's part of the new civilization game, which is what I'm calling my effort. Although every time you do something, they put out a video game with the same name. So you're in violation of copyright. Like the rock group Tesla. Or anything like that. The New World Order wrestling team. You look up anything that has to do with this kind of stuff on the internet, and there's a rock band with the same name, and they're at the top of the listings, and you have to go down to the bottom over 3 or 4 pages to find anything that's not about the rock band. This is deliberate suppression to keep young people away from knowledge of the true situation on the planet, because they don't want them growing up with any thoughts about it. And anyone like me, or anyone 20 years older, I'm 65, up to the people who are 85 who are still working in the freedom business, they're going to wait for us to die out and take generation X, Y, and Z and turn them into happy citizens of the New World Order. And your reference on that is the books and movies Brave New World and 1984, which were warnings. Here's a little bit about why ascension is not free and automatic. This conclusion in regard to the necessity for special culture and definitely favorable inner and outer conditions does not necessarily mean that cosmic consciousness is likely to manifest in every man who is put in these conditions. There are men, probably an enormous majority of contemporary humanity, in whom exists no such possibility at all. And in those who do not possess it in some sort already, it cannot be created by any culture whatever, in the same way that no kind or amount of culture will make an animal speak the language of man. The possibility of the manifestation of cosmic consciousness cannot be inoculated artificially. A man is either born with or without it. This possibility can be throttled or developed, but it cannot be created. Not all can learn to discern the real from the false. But he who can will not receive this gift of discernment free. This is a thing of great labor, a thing of great work, which demands boldness of thought and boldness of feeling. I'm just doing a series on finding your own fourth dimension and something called traveling without moving, which is about things that have to happen and things you need to know to even enter into having a wish to have a higher level of being or awareness or ethics. And courage, which are big parts of it, and what's being squeezed out of our culture is ethics and courage. And for the Bible adherents, in conclusion, I wish to speak of those wonderful words full of profound mystery from the Apocalypse and the Apostle Paul's epistle to the Ephesians, which are placed in the epigraph of this book. The apocalyptic angel swears that there shall be time no longer. We know not what the author of the apocalypse wanted to convey, but we do know those states of spirit when time disappears. We know that in this very thing, in the change of the time sense, the beginning of the fourth form of consciousness is expressed. The beginning of the transition to cosmic consciousness. In this and in phrases similar to it, the profound philosophical content of the evangelical teaching sometimes flashes forth. And the understanding of the fact that the mystery of time is the first mystery to be revealed is the first step towards the development of cosmic consciousness along the intellectual path. But what did the apocalyptic sentence mean? Did it mean precisely what we are now able to construe it? Or was it simply a bit of verbal art, a rhetorical figure of speech, the accidental harping of a string which has continued to sound up to our own time through centuries and millenniums with such a wonderfully powerful, true, and beautiful tone of thought? And there shall be time no longer. We know not now, nor shall we ever, but the words are full of splendor, and we may accept them as a symbol of remote and inaccessible truth. The Apostle Paul's words are even more strange, even more startling by reason of their mathematical exactness. A friend showed me these words in A. Dobrloff's from the book Invisible, who saw in them a direct reference to the fourth measure of space. Truly, what does this mean? That ye, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and depth and height. First of all, what does the comprehension of breadth and length and depth and height mean? What is it but the comprehension of space? And we now know that the comprehension of the mysteries of space is the beginning of the higher comprehension. The Apostle says that being rooted and grounded in love with all saints, they may comprehend what space is. Here arises the question, why must love give comprehension? That love leads to sanctity, this is easily understood. Love in the sense that the Apostle Paul understood it. In chapter 13 of the first epistle to the Corinthians. Love is the highest of all emotions, the synthesis, the blending of all highest emotions. Incontestably, this leads to sanctity. Sanctity, that is the state of the spirit, liberated from the duality of man, from his eternal disharmony of soul and body. In the language of the Apostle Paul, sanctity meant even a little less than in our contemporary language. He called all members of his church saints. Sanctity meant to him righteousness, morality, religiosity. We say that all this is merely the path to sanctity. Sanctity is something more, something attained. But it is, after all, immaterial how we shall understand his words. In his meaning or in ours, sanctity is a superhuman quality. In the region of morality, it corresponds to genius in the region of the mind. Love is the path to sainthood. But with sanctity, the Apostle Paul unites knowledge. Saints comprehend what is the breadth and length and depth and height. And he says that all, through love, may comprehend this with them. But may comprehend what exactly? Comprehend space, because breadth and length and depth and height, translated into our language of shorter definitions, actually means space. This last is the most strange. How could the Apostle Paul possibly know that sanctity gives a new understanding of space? We know that it must give it, but from what could he know that? None of his contemporaries ever united sanctity with the idea of the comprehension of space, and in general, there was no discussion at all about space at that time, at least among the Greeks and Romans. Only now, after Kant, and after we have had access to the treasures of thought of the Orient, do we understand that the transition into a new phase of consciousness is impossible without expansion of the space sense. But we wonder if this is what the Apostle Paul wanted to say. That strange man, Roman official, persecutor of the first Christianity, who became its preacher, philosopher, and mystic, the man who saw God, the bold reformer and moralist of his time, who fought for the spirit against the letter, and of course not responsible for the fact that he himself was understood by others not in the spirit, but in the letter. Is it this that he wanted to say? We do not know. But let us look at these words of the Apocalypse and the epistles from the standpoint of our usual positivistic thinking, which sometimes condescendingly agrees to admit the metaphorical meaning of mysticism. What shall we see? We shall see nothing. The flash of mystery, which appeared just for an instant, will immediately disappear. The words will be without any content. Nothing in them will attract our wearied attention, which will merely glide over them as it glides over everything. We will indifferently turn the page and indifferently close the book. An interesting metaphor, yes, but nothing else. and we fail to observe that we rob ourselves, deprive life of all beauty, all mystery, all content, and wonder afterwards why everything is so uninteresting and detestable to us, why we do not desire to live, and why we do not understand anything around us. We wonder why brute force wins, or deceit and falsification, though to those things we have nothing to oppose. The method is no good. In its time, positivism appeared as something refreshing, sober, healthful, and progressive, which explored new avenues of thought. After the sentimental speculations of naive dualism, positivism was indeed a great step forward. Positivism became a symbol of the progress of thought. But we see now that it inevitably leads to materialism, and in this form, it arrests thought. From revolutionary, persecuted, anarchistic, free-thinking positivism became the basis of official science. It is decked out in full dress. It is given medals. There are academies and universities dedicated to its service. It is recognized. It teaches. It tyrannizes over thought. But, having attained to well-being and prosperity, positivism immediately opposes obstacles to the forward march of thought. A Chinese wall of positivistic sciences and methods is built up around free investigation. Everything rising above this wall is condemned as unscientific. And seen in this way, positivism, which before was a symbol of progress, now appears as conservative, reactionary. The existing order is already established in the world of thought, and to fight against it is declared to be a crime. With astonishing rapidity, those principles which only yesterday expressed the highest radicalism in the region of thought have become the basis of opportunism in the region of ideas and serve as blind alleys stopping the progress of thought. In our eyes, this occurred with the idea of evolution, on which it is now possible to build up everything, and with the help of which it is possible to tear down anything. But thought which is free cannot be bound by any limits. True motion, which lies at the foundation of everything, is the motion of thought. True energy is the energy of consciousness. And truth itself is motion and can never lead to arrestment, to the cessation of search. All that arrests the motion of thought is false. Therefore, the true and real progress of thought is only in the broadest striving towards knowledge that does not recognize the possibility of arrestment in any found forms of knowledge at all. The meaning of life is in eternal search, and only in that search can we find something truly new. I have a friend who's a Bible scholar. He's always quoting stuff at me, of course. And he said something. I've been trying to find it online. I haven't been able to find it. I can't get a hold of him. He's in a wheelchair and doesn't have a phone. He said for example, if the devil comes to town, he'll have luggage and then he'll do bad things and leave town with all the gold. So the quote was something like, he also sins who carries the bags for the devil. So any of the financial community that participated in stealing $23 trillion from the United States, or any of the media people who refuse to cover crimes, or anyone with a web presence with something that's not completely true, to keep people's attention off the truth. This is materialism, and it's not the way to go, and you will not get anywhere as a being behaving like that. And as Mr. Black said in Meet Joe Black, you're going to wind up spending eternity in a place that doesn't even have any doors. So, I would suggest that you leave that group and join another group, which is all you have to do. Simple. Lots of things going on here. There's a man with a website very close to the New Civilization game. And at the end of his website, he has the screen rolls up like at the end of a movie, and it is quite tightly packed with green companies who are doing good things and inventing new technology. And he said, if I let this run, it will run for 18 days. So it's completely possible to get a job with that kind of ethical stance. You can see what's happened to the current game we're playing here. We've got 1% of the people with most of the money, and all the rest of us have very little and are hard pressed. And not that everyone's an angel, but the rigged parts of that game are illegal. There's still hard work to be done. If you want to have something, you're going to have to put in your exchange. But the thefts and the scams and stock market and money manipulations that are lies and unethical are illegal, and are not supposed to be happening, but they are. So I told this story twice before. I'll tell it again. I used to work for a guy who was the head of a stock market, and he was asked to step down because he was cleaning the place up and making it honest. And I'll say no more, but he was very proud of that. It's like a proudest moment. You know, you're losing your job because you're making the place honest. He went, okay, that's the way it is. Okay. Thank you very much. This is a book I'm getting a friend for Christmas. It's called Voyages of Hope, the saga of the bride ships. And there are the ships. These ships are on a river I can see from my window. I live where this story happened. I could throw a rock from here to the river. When the Marcella, the Tynemouth, the Robert Lowe, and the Alpha arrived in Victoria between 1862 and 1870, they brought over 100 single women to the West Coast. They were destined to become the wives not only of businessmen in the two colonies, but also of other workers who burrowed feverishly into the muck of the Goldfish Mountains. Many, as was the custom for unmarried women of the time, found shelter and service with the genteel aristocracy of Victoria, the capital city. Others grew rich in infamy under gaslights of a different kind. Their story is part of the shaping of this province. It is a tale of miners and murders, of racism, of respectability, of family and faith. Gold brought the men brought the missionaries, and the missionaries brought the women. When gold fever hit the Fraser River in 1858, the race was on, not just to secure the yellow metal for personal fortunes, but to secure a country. The gold camps along the Fraser River canyons grew into towns and showed unhappy signs of violence. A territory larger than France was at risk. Now, the Spanish managed to get most of South America, so the British came around up north of the Spanish colony of California and found a place they called British Columbia, because they couldn't get a South American Columbia. The men must stay and settle down, and the key to that colonial security, it was felt by many, was women. It wasn't a new idea at all. Marriageable women had already been shipped out to New Orleans, to New Zealand, and to the vast empty continent of Australia. They had been first sent to Canada as the Filles du Roi, the King's Daughters, beginning in 1663. The French crown paid the passage for over 800 single young women in a decade to emigrate to New France and become wives for the soldiers and settlers of France's colony in the New World. King Louis XIV promised each woman a dowry as soon as she married a member of the disbanded army regiment in Quebec City, or one of the thousands of bachelor farmers about the colony. The Filles du Roi themselves readily agreed to keep the Catholic faith, raise families, and essentially secure the fledgling colony of New France for a faraway crown. There are some similarities between the Filles du Roi and the women of British Columbia's bride ships. Both groups were caught up in the maelstrom of an unstable time at home. Many of the French immigrants were from the religious orphanage around Paris, while many of the British were from Anglican orphanages around London. Most were young girls, barely in their teens. Both groups were sponsored, and most of the girls had their passage paid for by powerful religious and humanitarian agencies. Their respected voyages out to the New World were equally fraught with terror, and when they arrived, all the women were wards of an overly intrusive colonial government. Most of those eligible married, and only a few chose the single life. Some prospered, some encountered heart-wrenching tragedy, while others were reduced to derelict and degraded lives. Many of their descendants are alive and thriving in Quebec and British Columbia. Today, the resemblance, however, ends there. So this was 150 years ago, so 2 lives of 75 is 150. The granddaughters of these women are the women we have here now. The men that the women of British Columbia's bride ships came to marry were not peasant farmers who wished only to settle down, work the land, and worship as they had done in Europe for centuries. The pioneers on this coast had different fires in their bellies. The experiment in social engineering that sent the bride ships to British Columbia was doomed from the outset. The single women who arrived on the 4 ships were caught between 2 clashing ideologies. The Anglican missionaries, who represented a patronizing institution that demanded obedience and compliance, and the Female Middle-Class Immigration Society, an early feminist organization which aimed to send independent, educated women to the frontier. Here, then, are the women of British Columbia's bride ships. The context of the times which set them on their way, their passage across cruel oceans, and their work, liaisons, and marriages. These are extraordinary stories of extraordinary human beings who made profound contributions to the world of 1862, and thence to our own time. The adventures of these women, the angst they suffered, and the success they achieved, make a tale of truly epic proportions. Like Milton's Satan, theirs is a pilgrimage through the chaos. Their stories, taken together, are symbolic of the larger human condition. So, no matter how cool we think we are today, this is only 150 years ago they were shipping women out here like cattle to colonize the place. And now I'm sitting here a few hundred yards from there. I've got 2 internet lines going here, talking to the world. We've got problems with tons of cocaine being brought over the border, and we've got the largest human trafficking sales volume in the world going on through the port here, which everyone's quietly ignoring. We have 2 federal officers in charge of human trafficking here. One that's going out for coffee, and the other one's watching the phone lines. And there are no SUVs with 6 guys with submachine guns in them making raids on these places. So we haven't done a professional job of running the world. And that's what's needed, is a professional management of the planet, not another ism. A large problem is the kind of people who are in the management jobs are psychopaths, and they have no interest in anything but themselves. And an administrative position is control over an area for the good of the people in the area, whether it be government or a private business. So this is, we're now 1 hour and 50 minutes away from the age of Aquarius, where we will have over 12,000 years of positive and feminine energy coming from the galaxy. We've just come out of 12,000 plus years of dark, male-dominated energy, which is hearkening back to the cycles I talked about, this 12, 25, 6,000 year turn around the equinox is like a breath in the life of the solar system. And 12,000 years is the inhalation, and 12,000 years is the exhalation. We've just come out of the exhalation, or nighttime, and now the inhalation starts, which contains light, hope, oxygen, positivity. And that change has been resisted to some degree by psychopaths. And it is inevitable that they lose because they were fighting the galaxy. And it's not a fight that anybody can win. This shoddy treatment of women is something that's going to eventually have to be researched out. I don't think it's a human idea. I think it's an extraterrestrial idea. If nothing else, it's a psychopathic idea. You can't take half of a species and decide that it's of no worth. And if anybody thinks that women are something you can do it with, you are sadly mistaken. Now, what is the tsunami of bullshit that has been propped up against the end of the Mayan calendar? Why was that? To keep our attention off the Middle East. The Middle East is where our culture comes from in the West, and China goes back at least 20,000 years. If you look at the Middle East, if you want to go from Asia to Europe or Africa, you have to go through the Middle East, or vice versa. If you're in Europe, if you want to go to Asia, you have to go to the Middle East. If you're from Africa and you want to go to Europe, you have to go through the Middle East, or if you want to go to Asia, you have to go through the Middle East. There's a lot of waterways, there's a lot of transportation, there are a lot of inventions. They've had electroplating there for 2,000 years, batteries, petroleum products of all kinds, things from Africa being shipped to Asia and Europe, things from Asia being shipped to Africa and Europe, things from Europe being shipped to Asia. A lot of big trade there for 5,000 years. Wars going on there for 5,000 years. It's the hub of activity on this planet. The biggest political thing there led the end of all of that was the Roman Empire, which controlled the entire rim of the Mediterranean Sea. That was morphed over into the Roman Catholic Church. And the Roman Catholic Church controlled Europe through the aristocracy, and Europe went out and colonized the world, but behind that is still the Roman Catholic Church. And in North America, this is the end of the age of Virgo, the Virgin. This was virgin territory for the Europeans, and although they did a genocide on the local people and swept it under the rug, the people that were brought over here, sent over here, supposedly the New World, were given an opportunity, but I think this was just a big business plan by the same old players. And Jordan Maxwell pointed out that on the statue of liberty, it says liberty, not freedom. And liberty is what a sailor gets. You've got liberty, but you better be back on time. So I think the opening up of North America was a business deal. And the recent scooping of $23 trillion out of America by Europe was, I think, them original investors pulling back out and pulling their investment. And here we sit. And if you look at the change between what I've just discussed, sending women over here in wooden ships around the Horn, to computers on my desk and the Mars rover. I can get the Mars rover live if I want. There's a rover on Mars. Also, for the since we're having a 2012 night, NASA wouldn't have sent the biggest and best rover they've ever made to Mars if there was going to be a meteor shower tonight from the Bureau coming through? Would they have? So, my little effort here and lots of other efforts are to introduce a spiritual, without the dogmatic religious history attached to it, approach to an alternative to cruel materialism. And materialism has gotten us to where we are now, which is gold, drugs, and guns, and lots of misery on a place that doesn't have to be like that. And the reason has been found, which is psychopaths, which is, for now we'll say a type of person, a type of human. They're identifiable biologically and psychologically. It's actually a damaged soul condition. And it's possible a third of them could be fixed, but they never show up for treatment. So that's going to be a major part of the cleanup, turnaround, change. I think Michael Sheridan out of Ireland, he's going to be the worldwide expert on it. He's going to be like the David Icke of psychopaths. I wish him tremendous success. Well, some of the psychopathic hatred directed your way as a sheep rather than a wolf is nicotine, for example, is the most addictive substance on the planet, and it's the only thing you're allowed to smoke. Alcohol is the most damaging drug statistically on the planet. It's ruined more lives, destroyed more homes, killed more people, and caused more violence than any other drug, and it's the only one you're allowed to have. They've got Nazi fluoride in the water to make you submissive. I read a huge book here on mind control, and a couple of things came out of it, but they have HARP and other facilities like that in Alaska that can put debilitating frequencies into your skull. The worst electromagnetic pulse to have around you is a 50 or 60 cycle AC magnetic field, and that's what we have when our power lines are all around us in every house. We're all sitting in the middle of that. Plus a lot of other electromagnetic pollution, which is not good for your peace of mind. You start, and then there's all the food additives. And air pollution. If you add all that up, plus with the chemtrails, there's 20% less sunlight than there used to be, and there's aluminum particles in all of our lungs, and supposedly there are also microfilament nano plants growing in us. If you add all that up, this is the answer to your question, why isn't life fun anymore? And none of this is being done by you or me. It's being done by people in positions where we should have a less psychopathic person in charge. And if we allow them to continue on, we'll wind up with a very small slave society where everything will be gray. And that has happened in our history on this planet, and it's happened on other planets. And it's gone on continuously, so please don't let it happen to you again, because it lasts a long time and it's very boring. In business, there's an old maxim that there are three kinds of people. There's the kind of people who make things happen. There's the kind of people who watch things happen. And there's the kind of people who wonder what happened. So, if you watch my videos, I would hope that you're somebody who's watching what happens. And I'd like you to move over to become someone who makes things happen. And I don't mean to become Rambo. The hero in Rambo was a trick so they can spot you, they can find you, they're thinking that one individual guy can do something. The way that the psychopaths work is they use paperwork and they take their time. And they use your own morals and paperwork and laws against you. So the way to work back against them is with paperwork and laws. But you can do anything, and I mean, Amelia Benz talks about raising the vibration of the planet. And that's not a cliche, because if you have a child molester in one house and someone like me next door, our contributions to the vibrational level of the planet are different. And the normal people outweigh the psychopaths 97.5% to 2.5%. So we should be able to raise the vibrational level of the planet. However, only the people who are awake enough to listen can get involved, because the other people will just wonder what happened. So if you're one of my peeps and you're not doing anything besides living your life, please add something. Anything. Okay?